What McKennie does is he steps up under pressure. Out of all the guys within the squad, Juventus have the second youngest team in Serie A. He's the one that when the going gets tough, he shows up.
Guys, this is a huge match, and of course, we can't have you two at the desk and not break down one of the biggest matches of the weekend.
I can't wait to hear this breakdown. Let's go.
We started getting into it a little bit in our pre-production meeting, and we're like, no, save this conversation for the desk, because there's so many different aspects into this game, and we were kind of trying to figure out what are the big storylines here. So first, Marco, how do you see these two teams shaping up against each other?
So the last game that we got between them was one of the wildest matches I've ever seen. It looked like a Premier League game. There was no defending. It was just high-flying, 4-4. The score ended. And in Italy, they actually didn't like it. They said, oh, look at the mistakes that we had. Too many, defensively, we should be better. But it showed you what was at stake. And Juventus came back and scored 2 goals. Juventus have been so inconsistent this year. It's so hard to understand where they actually are. Finally, in the last 3 games, they won 3 games for the first time all year.
Why?
Because of the teams that they were playing against. But they usually step up in the bigger games. So it's the smaller matches that usually hurt them, so I don't want to take away from them. And Inter have everything. They're fighting in all the different competitions. They went through the Champions League, only conceding 1 goal, basically in second gear. And they're in the Serie A where they gave a reaction against Fiorentina in a performance that showed what was at stake without the 2 wingbacks that you see right here. Dumfries was out with suspension. Di Marco had the flu. So even with their alternatives, they were able to get that job done. But now they have to go to Torino, go up against a team that, even if they're not in a best form, we don't know what their best shape is, they're always going to give a match for what this means.
Looking at this lineup right now, where's the weakness for both teams?
For the weakness for Inter is getting caught on the counter. That's how some of the best teams have hurt them, like Fiorentina when they won 3-0. It's the careless mistakes in the back, the lack of concentration, and then Juventus could hit them with the speed. And Bangula, the guy was playing in Serie C last year. He's a youngster from the Juventus youth system.
He started off strong, but kind of went dark for a bit.
Which is normal for young players, right?
Up and down.
But now he's getting into it. Conceição as well. I think that he's been brilliant. Colomboani, 5 goals in the 3 games that he started. So for Juventus, there's pieces, but when you look at this team, you have to say Inter is by far the better team on paper for the performances that they've done. But in the Derby d'Italia, for the hatred that these 2 clubs have, that goes way beyond the pitch. These 2 teams are still in court fighting each other for Scudetti that happened 20 years ago. There's a lot more to it than just the tactics.
Christine, can you talk about Weston McKennie's ability?
He's been waiting for you to ask.
Because I look at Toon Koopmeiners, right? Everyone talked about how good he was at Atalanta, the Dutch national team, that this is going to be a game changer. And he struggled, and they tried to play him at that 10 role. And now it seems like Weston McKennie is the attacking midfielder, and Koopmeiners is now...
Well, McKennie goes wherever he's told. Right back, left back.
He's playing everywhere, but it feels like his position now is a little bit more deeper in midfield. Locatelli and him kind of being the base in the midfield, and Weston can kind of have the freedom to roam. Are you impressed? Did you expect this? Like, how important is Weston to Juve's success?
Weston has been important to Juve's success since he got here. He made a splash coming in, loud, roaring like a lion when they first signed him, even in Champions League with that goal off the volley that everybody remembers Barca. And printed in everybody's brain. All of the Juve fans that were questioning, this American. And season over season, he's proven that he can perform. And not only can he perform wherever you want to stick him. And I've always said that this is both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness, because he never got to specialize. But maybe this, hear me out, in 2025 season is his specialty. It's that he can rise to the occasion no matter what, and I think that makes him a truly special player, one that's been overshadowed both within the conversation in the U.S. and also abroad. He has this ability to, his vision for the game is levels above what anyone's ever given him credit for. He's capable of being that teammate that can help assist, but he can also score goals, which we're seeing again now this season, when he's needed, especially in the big games. And I think that seeing the productivity of Colomboani, of some of the younger players, Bangula, his contributions both just crosses and otherwise lining people up, setting people up and running into spaces, but now also seeing him in the 10 role, I think he's going to actually flourish more in the 10 role. I think cut that man's strings, let him run loose and see what he's actually capable of. We've seen him in the back line this season, for the love of God. You know what? Give him freedom.
So one thing on McKennie, whenever we go to Italy and cover the games when CBS, we're on big CBS, we have a great opportunity to sit down with the coaches. So we sat down with Thiago Motta. We got 10 minutes alone with him. And I asked him about McKennie specifically because people were like, oh, why is he starting in Champions League right away? We thought he was out of the project. He said, put McKennie's qualities on one side. We already know the qualities that he has. What McKennie does is he steps up under pressure. Out of all the guys within the squad, Juventus have the second youngest team in Serie A. He's the one that when the going gets tough, he shows up. He doesn't crack. He always plays to his level. That's what his coach is saying about him. So all the problems that he had in the summer, I think it was contract things. Thiago Motta loves this guy.
Because nobody should have ever asked of him to take a pay cut. And the fact that he's getting the respect that he deserves now with a renegotiated contract is everything more than he deserves at this point.
He's the most consistent player for Juventus. In a season of inconsistencies, in a season where Charlie said it perfect, all the big money was spent in the midfield. Juventus spent $100 million between Douglas Luiz, Miners, Thuram. Thuram's been good. The other two, not so good.
No.
It's McKennie that everybody wants to see on the team sheet every week in and week out.
Yeah.
Incredible.
You were talking, Kupo was talking about how it feels like, well, I'm going to say it feels like Kolo Muani is kind of the key to unlocking this Juventus team so that they're getting a bit more wins, not just draws. And you said it feels like he was unlocking a little bit of McKennie as well. I mean, Charlie, do you feel like there's some other players that are really, their potential is being unlocked even more with this Kolo Muani signing? Well,
Mbangula, like you said, I think Conceição, they're just dynamic wingers. I think we always knew when players come to a new league, new team, the adjustment period, it can vary. It can be 6 months, it can be a year, it can be a couple months, it can be up and down. It feels like Juve right now, you're seeing the best version of what they have within this squad. And I look at Dusan Vlahovic and I say, this is a striker who has been wasteful. He's been given so many opportunities and maybe doesn't quite fit in the way that Kolo Muani does, because Kolo Muani is so dynamic. And you look at Marcus Thuram, what he's done for Inter, and you could say, okay, there's a lot of similarities in the way that they play. Outside of them both being French and both being athletic and having the pace, they just do a lot of similar things on the pitch to kind of help the rest of the team, the work rate, the runs into the channel, the thankless work, as well as being productive in the box. So I really like what Kolo Muani has brought to Juve, and I think it's been able to unlock something different in the attacking third.
You know, I think it's interesting that you draw the comparison to Inter, because I think it's a good one, especially with Thuram, because we had this conversation earlier in the season about Lautaro's dip in form, and I had defended him in saying that he's been used differently this season, especially linking up with Thuram. He's been a lot more unselfish. You saw Lautaro dipping deeper into the midfield to sort of filter these passes and kind of essentially draw off of Thuram, which is making Thuram more productive. And I think that in my imagining of this Juve side, there's a world in which you can use Kolo Muani and Vlahovic effectively. You just have to figure out how to make it work and whether that fits into a Motta system.
So Motta drew the line in the sand. He's benched. It's going to be 5 times in a row that Dusan Vlahovic is benched for Kolo Muani. And you mentioned work rate. I think one of the really bad things that happened was Vlahovic, when he was on his national team duty with Serbia, he said, yeah, the reason why I perform here is because the coach is not telling me I have to defend all the time. I'm not having to work hard. And I don't think Thiago Motta took to that well. And Kolo Muani does do that. And he could do a lot of things. I'm with Kupo, though. And I still think when I look at how many minutes he's played 45 minutes, Dusan Vlahovic, in the last 4 games. That's a player you spend $70 million plus on. That's going to have very little resale value. You're going to be lucky if you get half of that at this point come the summer. We know he's got the contract issues as well. I still think while Vlahovic has not done well enough, you have to find a way to play them two together. Especially in game, when you can't find the solution, they can play together. I refuse to believe that they can't. Because of the options that Juventus has and the lack of players that are performing around them as well, I say, why can't you try it? Why can't we see Kolo Muani, who likes to drift out wide a lot of times, he could give Vlahovic the balls that he's been waiting for. So I still want to see that happen.
What's going to be, for you, who's going to be the biggest matchup on the pitch in this game?
Did you see the back line?
Yeah.
Juventus?
It's bad.
It's
real
scary.
bad.
We're waiting to see if Cambiaso is going to be back. It doesn't seem like he's going to be. Kelly had a sickness. He was a disaster in their Champions League match on the goal that they conceded. I'm nervous in the back. Inter is so much more prolific. They're better in every single aspect. You could goalkeeper to defense to midfield to the attack. Inter is second to none. It really is if Inter show up and want to perform, which they already showed last week that they still are hungry for the Scudetto, and then the intangibles in a derby that we know anything could happen, but make no mistake about it, Inter is a much better side than Juventus.
Talk about Timothy Weah. And also, kind of like some of these guys have had a high ceiling, have had dipped in form, injuries. Comes back, playing more an attacking role. Now it looks like he's settling at right back. Where do you think his strength is? How does he help Juve?
I don't think we've yet seen the best of Weah. We haven't found his ceiling at all. I think that him being in the back line, especially playing that right back potentially, or anywhere in the back line, at this point, I don't know that we're going to see the best of him back there because it is so weak. I think that he can help out Gatti on that side, but again, Gatti has a lot of deficiencies. If you want to get a goal out of your center back every once in a while, great, but defending-wise, critical errors in that back line. I think that if you're coming up against a Çalhanoğlu and Lautaro pairing, just the way that Çalhanoğlu can just sort of moderate that midfield and sort of figure out how to draw these lines and find those passing lanes, they're going to dice up that back.
Look at the numbers. Top goal scorers for Juventus. Dusan Vlahovic with 8, Colomani with 5, Tim Weah with 5. So he's the second top goal scorer in this team, and he's been in and out, and he's played as a right back at times. Him and Thiago Motta, they love each other. We had the chance also to speak with Tim Weah. He said, wait, once things click, we're going to be scoring goals, we're going to be flying high. He's had to play in a lot of different areas, but that doesn't mean he hasn't performed in a lot of different areas. For me, right back, right wing, even center forward when he's done it, he's a guy that I always want on my team.